Days on the Daily Huddle. My name is Keith Lisenby. I am the owner and CEO of Atlas Behavioral Health Consulting. We are so glad that you are here. I'm so glad that you're here. Whether you're starting your week with intention and purpose, or just taking a pause to grow on this Monday or whatever day that you're watching or listening to the show. Before we get started, let me just remind you that we're trying to make this daily huddle thing grow. So I'm asking you, please hit a like, make a comment, subscribe to wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, make a comment, and even share this with your colleagues, share this with your family, share this with your friends who you think may benefit from what we're going to talk about today. So, as we begin now, let me ask you something. Let me ask you some questions. Have you ever asked a question that shut down someone instead of opening them up? Or maybe there was a moment of emotion, and before the person could speak, you jumped in and filled the silence. And just like that, the moment passed. Today, we're talking about how to keep those doors open. We're going to talk about the big idea and the big question, answering the big question of the day today. What are discovery questions and what is purposeful silence? Conversations feel safe and connective. Do not rely on advice. It's time for that. They rely solely in the very beginning and throughout on listening, patience, and asking the right questions. These tools that we're going to talk about today aren't just helpful, they're transformational, and they are backed, as always, by real science. If you want your conversation to feel less forced and more real, you are now in the right place, watching and listening right now. So let's jump right into it. Let's jump into the first main question. What are discovery questions? Discovery questions, long and short of it is, are open-ended, empathy first prompts that help people name what they're experiencing and imagine what could come next. These questions always begin with what or how, but never why. I'll explain that a little bit later, just to kind of give a little bit of tease, all right? But it's what or how questions. And there's a key distinction. And you can use what and how interchangeably, but key distinction about what and how questions. What questions generally help people illuminate or surface the problem, emotion, or issue that's at hand? The how question helps people to illuminate and explore possible solutions or possible next steps moving forward. Examples would be the following. What has been the hardest part about this for you? What happened that left you feeling this way? How would you like to move forward? How would you like to proceed? And how can I support you right now? Those are all like examples. The what to eliminate the problem, solution, I mean, not the solution, but the problem and the issue or the emotion, and the how eliminate possible solutions. It encourages reflection and ownership without judgment. Curiosity being the key here. Promotes collaboration, not control. We all been in those conversations where, it feels like one person is trying to control the conversation and so forth, but these skills don't talk about that. We're talking about collaborating because collaboration leads to short-term and long-term relationships and long-term benefit, not just short-term. We've been talking a lot about the idea of intentional empathy through the last several episodes, and to bring them up again because this is a big part of it. These discovery questions. They align with core values, the idea of curiosity over assumptions, exploration over fixing the problem immediately, safety over urgency. time and patience being the key. Now, we talked about why questions and why questions may not be the best option. Matter of fact, I say throw it out of your vocabulary. We are conditioned. We have been conditioned, and remember, emotions are constructed by past events and current situations. So every time typically, we hear why questions. Why do you feel that way? Why did you do that? That leaves people feeling accused and feeling defensive. They do not promote a free flow of information. They do not promote clear discussions, and they don't clear the path for truth being spoken. Questions instead like, what led to that decision? What led you to feel that way? They're more based on curiosity, wanting to know more, but not accusing. So I suggest remove why out of the conversation. I know there might be a controversial topic for some because, what's your why is something that's out there. But in this case, we're not using why. Some same intention being used with what and how questions. Remember that why puts people on the defensive, so we're going to not use them. So we stay with how or what. But let's jump to the next question. What is purposeful silence and why is it so powerful? Uh-oh, I just said a why question. Uh-oh, slap my wrist on that one. But what makes it so powerful? So in definition, purposeful silence is the intentional pause that follows a label. If you remember labels from a previous episode, labeling an emotion or theme within what someone is saying, or a moment of emotion. That is purposeful silence. You're intentionally pausing to let an emotion land, let that label land, let a question, a what or how question land. It allows space for reflection, clarity, and trust to emerge. Why does it work? Encourages the brain to construct emotion safely. Remember Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett talking about that construction of emotion based on past events and current context. That silence allows the brain to predict better. And when it predicts better, you have better responses from the person that you're in a conversation with. It signals to the speaker, that silence signals to them, I'm not pushing you. I'm not rushing you. Take your time. Key intentional empathy principles here goes back first off to the 55-38-7 rule. 55% of communications impact is body language. 38% is tone. 7% is the words that we use. That silence sets a tone of not being rushed, of being patient, being calm, where there are no words. Silence is not awkward. There are a lot of people that struggle with that silence. Like they feel like they gotta jump in. But I'm encouraging you, don't do that. Let that silence be the thing that invigorates the conversation. I know it's counterintuitive, but it truly does if used in the right way. It says, again, I'm here, I'm not rushing this, and it lets people step into the truth. Deeper dive here. Why does it work? Both of these methods. Again, the brain science behind it. Like I said, emotions are constructed. They're not automatic. So these questions and the pauses and the silence allow the brain to predict better and construct our emotions better and the emotions of the person we're interacting with. Discovery questions and silence provide that supportive environment for clarity. When we ask an open-ended question and wait, we're not just inviting an answer. We're hoping and helping someone's brain make sense of their world. And when everything is aligned, then there is safety and the nervous system relaxes with the person we're talking to. And that is how trust grows. How about some real life examples? Parenting, everyone's favorite, but parenting example. Your teen jumps in, comes in the door, slams their backpack down after school and says, nothing ever works out for me. Would be a good discovery question. Well, What happened today? It's making you feel that way. Looking for possible solutions collaboratively with your team. How do you want to handle this? How do you want to proceed tomorrow? Of course, give them space. Teenagers need more time because they have less of the ability to have their brain predict based on past events because they're younger. And so it takes them a little bit of a longer period of time to construct and predict, their brains predicting accurately what's happening. And so give them more time using purposeful silence. It's not solving the problem for them. It's not about that. It's about helping them feel safe enough to name it and imagine the forest path forward. In the workplace, employee says they are burnt out. Can't keep doing this, they say. Well, what's the discovery question there? What or how? Well, example would be, what's been most draining for you lately? Looking for solutions maybe together. How can we shift things to make them more sustainable? Again, pause. It's not empty air. It allows time to think and feel and calm and then move forward. In relationships, partner seems emotionally shut down. And they say, oh, I'm tired of doing everything myself. I'm tired of doing everything. I'm doing everything. Discovery questions. What's feeling the heaviest? What's making you feel like you're doing everything yourself? And how can I show up better for you? It's a question to eliminate possibilities. Again, don't jump in. Don't try to be like, say, how can I show up better for you? And then jump in with your own solutions, which many people do. And it shuts the other person down when we do that. That's why purposeful silence works. In conclusion, discovery questions help people surface truth and imagine forward. Purposeful silence makes emotional safety feel real. And it helps everyone, discover their own truth, put it out there, but also in a safe way. That silence also encourages it and encourages calm and reflection and before moving forward. Give that to them. Give them that gift of silence. Your challenge this week in your conversation, one conversation a day, don't jump in and solve the problem or try to solve the problem or explain the problem or explain it to them what the solution is before. Don't do that. Do this instead. Ask a discovery question, at least one. Then breathe 5 to 8 seconds. Wait. Ask another how or what question until what questions and how questions are meant to give you a deeper understanding. Leave room for the story to rise. Give them that space, give them the silence, and notice what changes when you lead with the empathy, not urgency. With that, before we start wrapping this thing up, I want to open our audience and give to provide any comments or questions at this juncture. So what kind of questions are out there?
Hello, Keith.
Good morning.
So I'm getting that the silence is not random. It follows in a particular sequence and is there as a space to allow the discovery questions to do their work.
That is the whole
Is that,
point. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, that is the whole point of purposeful silence. You are doing it intentionally. You're doing it so that you are giving the other person the time, the space, the emotional space, the intellectual space to think through and think in a calm way their answers and how they want to respond. because a lot of times when people who are struggling with feeling the need to jump in and fill that gap of silence, then when they do that, then it's usually to give their own opinion or push the agenda forward and so forth, and it keeps the other person from really giving their answer in a clear way.
Yeah. Are there times when maybe the question was not a discovery question? Maybe it was
Hmm.
a question that started with why and was particularly prickly, right?
Hmm.
And the person just really shut down and the silence is there. What do you do? What would you advise or prescribe in the case of that kind of silence, where it's the silence that I provoked myself by actually not asking a discovery question?
Sure. That's a great question. And so I mentioned earlier the idea of giving at least 5 to 8 seconds, and that will seem like an eternity to some of us and some of you out there, that 5 to 8 seconds of silence. Give that time. And if it really seems like they are shut down, then what I would do, harken back to another, episode where we talked about this, talking about labeling and mirroring, I would go ahead, I would drop a label at that point, and I would call myself out. If I think that my question was not phrased correctly because it was a why question and it shut him down, I'm going to say, it sounds like my question really struck you in a way that made you feel like you couldn't really answer like you would want to. Feels like when I asked why, that really shut you down. And then give silence again to let that land and then see what comes out of that. Any other questions,
Yeah,
comments,
and
thoughts at all?
yeah, thank you, Keith. Thank you. That creates an opening for me.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, Keith. Good morning.
Good morning.
I got a couple things. One is just a little bit of a share, and then it builds into my question. So
Yes,
the
sir.
share first is I've told in the last half a dozen years a story of my being a water skier, and I'm part of a water ski club that performs water ski shows. So we have audiences, but we also have practice nights where we're not there in the show fashion. We're just doing our routines to rehearse for the show night. But we do get community members watching our practice too. They're observers.
Hmm.
And so I tell the story about I was out there with one of our formations with a bunch of our water skiers behind a boat and skiing. And I come up on the stage, and again, we're show skiers. So I'm kind of coming up to the stage area and practice mantra. But there was somebody over by one of the trees at this lakefront park. And I looked over, I caught the guy's eye, and I'm like, "Hey, anything you like here? Are we doing anything right? What do you think? What do you got for me? And just kind of got some banter going. It broke
Hmm.
out a nice discussion where I just kind of moseyed over to him to have a nice community discussion.
Hmm.
And the discussion was so useful that I ended up posing to him, "What about joining our ski club?"
Hmm. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and to your point, my waiting for an answer for several seconds was the key because I keep telling the story
Hmm.
because of his response.
Right.
His response was, "I thought you had to be somebody."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, that was so instructional. I've been doing this for 39 years, and that reaction 6 years ago was like the most impactful reaction I've ever gotten with what I
Mm-hmm.
do in water skiing or most all things in life to say, a man is telling me I thought you had to be somebody. It's like, wow, I don't want anybody on the planet to feel like that for anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
it took waiting for that answer to get it. If I just would have taken the uncomfortable moment and moved on, I never would have gotten that wisdom,
Hmm.
from this gentleman, right? So that being said, we live in a fast-paced society, instant gratification society, and business meetings, presentations, podcasts like this. You can have an event, a Zoom meeting, where people are expecting things to move along, and we may not be, with other people in a conversation where they appreciate the waiting.
Hmm.
So how do you deal with that when it's not as much a one-to-one conversation, but there's more personalities in the interaction, but you still want to keep that value of every person gets the time and the space, that we can, really get the entirety of what they have to share, or to make sure that they're taken care of when other people may be a little bit more antsy, or other people may be jumping in, like you're talking about. So how do you do that in a group setting?
In a group setting, it is more challenging. I definitely grant you that. And you have different personalities in the room. One of the things I thought about as you were telling your story was that there are three typical negotiator strategy conflict styles that people have. And they all show up in a meeting. You have the people who are kind of the assertive aggressive types who they're going to jump in. They're not going to wait too much for silence. They probably should, but they're not. So then you have more of the analysts, who do like the silence. They want to think and process. And then in the room, you're also going to have, the collaborators. And you're going to have the people who are more involved in wanting the relationships to build rather than getting, into an immediate solution. And so with those different types, the same type of rules I usually apply is, giving that silence 5 to 8 seconds, because you may not know what everyone's personality type in the room is. And if you do, you want to give them all space. If there is too much silence and things seem like, and I'm running the meeting or I'm noticing something with someone else, again, don't be afraid to label. If you see if someone kind of give a body language or facial expression kind of says it got something just crossed their mind or something seemed to kind of strike them, check in, hit a label and say, Dave, looks like something crossed your mind. What would you like to throw into the mix here? you know. And yeah, some people may feel like they're put on the spot a little bit, but also that label actually, helps to like really kind of show like, trying to get other people's involvement. But labels really do work in those situations, along with keeping the silence as well. Um, and because people do need time to kind of think and process.
Excellent. Thanks, Keith. That's
Yeah,
good.
you're welcome. Last question. Last question. All right. So we're gonna begin this wrap this thing up. So for today, thank you everyone here. Thank you everyone for listening, everyone watching, everyone that's here today, and anyone who's like watching or listening is in their leisure or at work or driving around and so forth. Thank you again. Please remember, give a like on this thing, subscribe to the channel or whatever that you are hearing this or seeing this from, and share, make a comment on the comments and wherever it is, but also share with anyone you feel like might benefit the information here. But again, thank you again for all being here. And as always, we're going to close with our 8 rules of the daily huddle. Are we ready for them? I think we are. Number 1, love always. Number 2, laugh. Laugh out loud as much as you can. Stress less. Think about this question. Is this going to matter in 10 hours? Is this going to matter in 10 days? Is this going to matter in 10 months? Is this going to matter in 10 years? I imagine if you really think about it, a lot of those answers are no. So stress less in the moment. Eat healthy, eat more plant-based foods. 5, give. Give yourself, even if it's just time. 6, sleep at least 7 hours. Make them quality. Make them quality 7 hours, but you need it. 7, move. Move every day. Nothing better for your brain. Nothing. And 8, last but not least, but very important, check your assumptions. Check your assumptions at the door. Be curious. Until next time, keep asking, keep listening, and keep leading with heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.